All
I'm
right,
queued in now.
everybody in?
Hey, what's up? We
Yo,
are
yo.
live.
All right. Well, would RW like to go ahead and introduce himself?
Hi, my name is RW. I'm a friend of Dronetek's. I help out on a server with SEO and group cohesion. And Safas asked me a couple weeks ago if we could do a server versus server and threw this topic at me. So I spent the last couple weeks pulling up sources and found out today that I'll be going after my buddy Incarnation. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right, perfect. And Incarnation, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm Incarnation, leader of the Nexus. We're gonna be having a good little conversation here with our good friends here at RW server along with Dronetek. So it's gonna be a good time. I typically fly off the cuff a little bit here with my debates, especially on a subject like this, which I'm pretty familiar with. So I really haven't done much formal research, but I think I can slug with you there, RW.
All right.
Yeah,
Drone.
I'll be a little slow, but I will be dropping any sources in the chat for people. So it's not just off the cuff.
All right, perfect. And Dronetek, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hello. I'm Dronetek. I've been on the internet and YouTube and LiveLeak and a lot of other platforms, calling out the media for about 20 years now, and I'm still doing it. I do it on YouTube. You can find me at Dronetek, and that's about it.
All right, perfect. So I would like to, would anybody like to begin? Anybody want to make a statement at first? All right, perfect.
Oh yeah, by the way, I'm on Twitter also. Can I say that real quick? I'm also on Twitter. FN Critic Guy.
Yeah, go give him crap. He likes it.
All right, now I'm done.
So the proposal is that climate change is a valid reason for government intervention in the economy. I am against the proposal. I do not think that it's a valid reason. If it was based on pollution and environment more than carbon dioxide, I could get behind it because I understand that situation. But I believe that the information can be pulled to show that the vehicle that's being driven towards climate change laws by politicians is not a valid reason for it, and I'm not willing to put fuel in that vehicle. So that's my basic proposal for this, or response to the proposal. And I'll be going into, if we bring it up, what we are doing with legislation currently for controlling climate change based on electric vehicles and green energy. Yeah, go ahead, Incarnation.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm less going to converse about whether or not the current policy or the current direction of policy is adequate enough to have an impact on climate, but whether or not the conversation is, or at least to me, was whether or not governments should get involved in the economy to slow down what they call climate change. More if we're speaking more specifically to that, then I think there is a breadth of reasons why our government should be active in curtailing excessive pollution within their countries for both the short term and the long term. I do believe that countries, in and of themselves, have a responsibility to their constituents, both current and future constituents, to offer them, basic needs. And having land that are survivable on is a core tenet to human survivability, and thus a core tenet to government responsibility. And therefore, yes, they should definitely be involved in the oversight of the amount of pollution that private enterprises or private corporations or even private citizens can enact, and also be engaged in the conversation of those impacts that private citizens are having on their environment, and also be active in the resolution in terms of finding a worthwhile solution that will both, promote prosperity, growth, and safety for citizens present and in the future.
So you're also saying that it's a pollution control situation more than a climate change situation. Can you tie those two together more to make it fit this debate? Because I feel like they're separate subjects.
Well, I would say that when we're speaking about our impact on the planet, given that the planet is a dynamic system and every variable can have an impact on it, I don't really think that you can exclude one from the conversation or the other. So pollution, CO2 levels, all of itself falls under the umbrella of pollution and also climate, and is also contributing to climate change. So I don't think you can really separate the two.
Well, I'm curious how to go forward with the debate subject based on that because I'm struggling with the policies that are being enacted to solve the problems that are being presented to civilians in the country because they don't seem to actually be solving the problem. They just seem to be something that was done that seems to not be helping whatsoever. Um,
So let's talk.
that's
Let's talk about that. Let's dig into that a little bit.
okay. So let me pull up an article. I'll first make my statement, and then while you're talking, I'll bring up the article. Um,
Mhm.
so CO2 is considered to be uh, detrimental to the climate change situation because it's a greenhouse gas that traps heat. Um, the problem with people saying that CO2 is detrimental otherwise is strange to me because it's even admitted in the articles for climate change that CO2 fertilization is a thing and it actually helps plants to increase production and become more vivid. So by removing carbon dioxide from the equation, it could also be detrimental towards plant life at a certain point to go too far in the other direction. So I don't think it's just a matter of completely wiping it out and doing our best to stop it completely. I think it needs to be understood that there is a healthy amount of CO2 that needs to be allowed to work in the system itself.
Yeah, I think if the conversation is being had that you have to remove all CO2, I think you're having the conversation with somebody who's not necessarily well educated on the subject. We obviously as humans know that there is a balance to the system and there is a certain requirement for certain elements. Whether or not they're toxic to humans is irrelevant when we're talking about the planet. So yes, we obviously understand that there is a level of CO2 that needs to be present. I think if you also look through through archaeology a little bit and through just the research of the history of our soil, you'll notice that when there were high levels of CO2, there were also an accompanying high levels of vegetation, right, to absorb that CO2. In the current trend that we're going, while I agree with you, we need some CO2, we are currently at this present time burning an excessive amount of CO or creating an excessive amount of CO2 while also at the same time hampering the planet's ability to absorb that CO2 through the system dynamically as it was kind of meant to do, without the impact of humans, right? Without the impact of humans, without the impact of humans dumping more CO2 in the planet than the planet has ever seen in such a short period of time. So the planet in and of itself takes a long time to adapt to these changes, and humans are accelerating those changes a little bit faster that could, and I'm saying could, have some impact on human life per se. Not necessarily the planet, but on human life. And this is the conversations that are being had about climate change. While yes, people like to absorb it around, oh, we need to save the planet. Really, what it's about is a selfish conversation about the preservation of human life. That's what we care about. Because ultimately, I think any scientist worth their salt would tell you that short of a catastrophic event caused by humans, humans are likely to die off well before the planet will.
So I agree with you when it comes to how we're treating the planet and cutting forests down and stuff like that, because we're taking away the CO2 sinks at the same time that we're rolling out more combustion and gas that we're pumping into the environment based on industry, residential, and commercial. Um, it would be nice
But
to
it's not
see.
just Yeah, just to add to that, it's not just plants, right? Is we're polluting our oceans at rates at incredible rates, and that's affecting the algae production. The oceans are actually what absorbs most of the CO2. They're actually what creates most of the oxygen on the planet. It's not actually plants. So while yeah, sure, you can say chopping trees down is having an impact. I think we're actually planting more trees than we're chopping down. I'm not quite sure how we're impacting the system in that such a way, but the pollution or the damages that we're causing to our ocean are really what's going to speed up this process.
Yeah, I agree with you when it comes to the algae in the ocean and how that works in the CO2 cycle for sure. Um, I mean, we're in agreement then that it's pollution and is def- destruction of the environment through pollution and removal of nature is definitely something that has to be curtailed. It would be nice to see legislation moving in the direction of stopping corporations from stripping the earth, and instead of just a tax that they have to pay, it's actually, you know, uh, intervening in that situation and stopping them from being able to do that in the first place. I'm not sure how much of that is happening in the world, but it seems like we're kind of over here in left field saying, get rid of your gas burners, no more combustible engines by this year, this and that. But on the other here, all corporations are raping the earth and polluting it, and that needs to be addressed 100% more than what's happening on the left. I'm not saying we don't want to move in the direction of a green energy, but the problem with a lot of the green energies that's happening is the byproducts and the waste product of the green energies are not known now on how to remove them from being a pollutant in our environment. And we're also burning more coal and fossil fuels to support the electric network for the electric vehicles and all the new lithium battery systems. So I just, it seems like we're in agreement on the situation. So I'm not sure how much of a debate there is here.
Well, so see me, I don't think that, obviously I think there needs to be a long-term implementation, and I don't think waiting until you have the infrastructure is the time to switch your population over to a particular mindset. I think you need to drag that particular mindset through a few generations while you build up your infrastructure, so that once you have both kind of symbiotically meet at the same time, where you can then sort of start moving on as a society. I do think that these things need to be slightly engineered. So I do think that part of what you're seeing with this push to electrification is kind of just trying to force this conversation so that it can happen through one or two generations when we're finally at the point where we have the energy and it is clean to sustain the surge in demand from on our grids. Switching people to electric everything will be less of a challenge.
Do you think that we're moving too quickly at the current speed?
I no, actually, I think. Well, okay, it's a two-sided question. I think we're moving too slow, personally speaking. But part of the reason why we're moving too slow is because there's, capitalism that's kind of holding this progress back a little bit. Because unfortunately, I think there's going to be such a major shift in economies, and especially the energy sector, and the energy sector is quite possibly the most lucrative sector to be in. I just think that there's some reluctance to push a change from the people who are holding a high level of wealth.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Wu-Tang song called Cream. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
But
cash
anyway,
rules everything around me.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's not worth really debating the aspect of money because we can't do anything about that. We can argue philosophy. I feel
Well,
like,
so here's where I think governments need to get involved. Okay, and I think governments are already getting involved. They don't need to necessarily get involved in pushing overarching regulations on companies and forcing them to abide by a particular way. But what they can do, right, is they can divert a certain amount. They can say, oh, we'll throw it just a 1% tax, right, and that 1% tax goes straight into developments of renewable energies, right? And it's a government funded program. It's a government run program, fine, but it assures that there is adequate amount of funding that is not tied to profit that goes towards the research and development of alternative energy, or even, non for profit energy, like we're seeing currently happening with nuclear fusion. Once we can figure out that recipe, I think these conversations about government involvement in protection of the environment will start shifting away, and it'll just be, guys, we have so much electricity that what are we even doing burning oil?
yeah, I mean, I don't know how far into the future we are at that, for that, because I mean, so for example, if California's United States' big test subject, because legislation is being pumped out there before the rest of the nation that is forcing businesses to go green, use batteries. For example, gardeners can't use combustible engines. They have to have their battery packs. And that battery pack system, they have to have the money to support that and pay for that. And then that system isn't as efficient. As that technology increases and those batteries change, go ahead.
Yeah, I disagree with. So there's certain tools where electrification isn't as efficient, but I would say that for the most part, electrification of tools are way more efficient than gas-powered tools.
When it comes to, I can only really talk towards gardening because I've done landscaping, and the battery life of those systems doesn't last long enough for a day's work. It'll last long enough for a medium to small size job, but you have to have a very large amount of power packs running and the ability to charge them on site to continue for a 8-hour shift. I think that the technology is definitely not there yet for it to be efficient.
Or alternatively, you purchase the right equipment for the right job. So in my world, in my field, right, in construction, we have electrified absolutely everything, and everything is cordless. The main investment that we do is in batteries. That tool is not the problem. The battery is. Well, we have batteries that will last 5 days on the field of guys just sitting there and slapping drywall on a wall. We've
What is the
invested.
equipment that's running on that? That's insane.
Well, typically it's from the contractor lines of your particular popular brand. So I've shifted a lot of my tools to Milwaukee because Milwaukee offers a very, very comprehensive line of professional grade tools, and within those lineup of professional grade tools, you'll have their different sizes of batteries. And with those different sizes of batteries, you'll have ones that have different outputs of higher amperage, which means if you need something that requires a lot of torque or a lot of power, you'll go with the high amperage. Or if you need something that uses low power but needs to last very long, well, then you can get a 1.5 hour battery that will last you your entire day or 2 days before you have to put it on the charger. So it really depends, what you're doing, but if you're using the right tool for the right job, electrification is leaps and bounds better than anything gas.
I mean, to run a drill all day long for 5 days on a battery, it's pretty impressive. To run a circular saw all day for 5 days on a battery doesn't seem possible. But
you want to know what I used the other day, the tool that I use, and I was super skeptical. But Milwaukee came out, okay, and they gave me an electric stamper. So those big stampers that they use to stamp the ground, like your landscaper, and typically it's a gas powered, so you crank and pull, and then you use the stamper. Okay, so this was all electric, and it had this massive battery pack on it. The Milwaukee guy drops it off. He said, "Hey, it's your test unit. Here's your full charge on the battery. Use it till it dies. I'll come back at the end of the day." And because I bold-faced told him, I said, "There's no way in hell I will ever trust this thing. Like a gas powered, it just works. I put it on, it just works." He's just like, he looked at me and he laughed. He's like, "There's 5 components to this machine. One of them is the battery. So there's less things to break. All you have to worry about is the battery. I'm telling you, the battery will last all day." So use the machine all day. The battery lasted all day. So the technology is, when I said the technology is not moving fast enough, I truly meant it. It is not moving fast enough. It is moving at an incredible pace right now, but it could be even faster. And
that sounds awesome that the technology on that end of the fence is working that efficiently for that long. That's great. I look forward to seeing that across the board. And then
here's what I will admit though. Here's what I will admit. That what I just said here, what I just laid out for you, comes at a cost, right? That stamper alone was $10,000. I would never in my life purchase that stamper for $10,000. It's not economically viable for me as a business to do that.
Right. The point I was going to make was that we have to be able to get the cost and the ethics of those batteries and the resources to make those batteries in line as well, because it's a bit of a cluster F right now for cobalt at least.
Well, I could say the same thing about the insurmountable, the crazy amount more that is involved in manufacturing and maintaining an internal combustion car or machine.
Yeah, I'm not praising the oil industry. Don't get me wrong. I'm just pointing out.
No, I know, but if we're talking about impacts on the environment, maintaining a gas-powered equipment, right, or gas or diesel-powered equipment is considerably considerably worse for the environment than an electric, even taking into account the damage that cobalt mining does.
I'm not very aware of the damage or the earth scar that cobalt is causing. I was speaking more towards the ethical mining of it, more of how other nations are treating the nations that are getting them the resource. And I can understand that in oil, in big business or big oil, you're going to have those situations also. I'm just bringing it to the forefront. It's something that does need to be figured out until it's moved away from we can.
So explain to me then, if government shouldn't get involved and all of this has an impact, right? Because this is my point at the end of the day, is that every little thing that we do has an impact on the environment, and every little thing that we do in the other direction also has an impact on the environment. So it's a game of checks and balances to figure out what's actually worth it and what's not, and at what cost will it happen.
What is the question?
So, sorry, I lost my little question here. So, ultimately, what is your holdback on, let's say, how do you think private corporations can remedy this without government involvement? How can private corporations remedy the situation of ethics as it comes to the gather of our resources?
For the gathering of resources, I mean, it usually comes down to tax breaks. So for the gathering of resources, it would have to be some type of benefit to a corporation that makes them make more money by ethically resourcing materials. When it comes to
yeah, sorry, go.
When it comes to, I lost the other thought, so go for it.
No, but so wouldn't you say though that tax breaks are a government intervention?
Tax breaks are a government intervention, yes. It's a government intervention, like saying that if a corporation puts money towards research and development of green energy, they'll get a tax break. That is a intervention that I can get behind because I understand it. But to intervene in ways that don't exactly solve the problem, I can't get behind that.
But as we've kind of laid out here, right? Everything we do has an impact. So even if the government is pushing to electrify things, wouldn't you say that in the long run it's a net positive? Because we're ticking ourselves slowly but surely in the right direction.
I do want it to be a benefit to move towards taking care of the earth. Yes, I do see that as a net positive. The path getting there, I think, needs to be transparently talked about so that we can see what's being talked about and the bills that are being put forward, and that we, the people, can get behind it and not just be told, rip out all this stuff. You're no longer allowed to have it, and we're moving in this direction now, so you have to buy that. It might be super expensive right now, but one day you're going to benefit from it. It's that kind of stuff that makes me go against the movement instead of backing it.
I agree. I mean, I agree with that. And I think that's where government intervention can come in, right? At the right places, right? I think there should be. I think if you tilt capitalism in the right direction, I think capitalism will take care of itself. Right. And I think in the context of electrification and the viability behind it, I think if governments can tilt capitalism in the right direction, I do think capitalism will take care of the rest more efficiently and probably come up with better ways of doing it. But it's how do we get there to tilt capitalism in that sense and let the system do what it's got to do? How do we get to that point, and at what cost do we or what rights do we give, and what rights do we give our governments basically to get us there?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't have much left to the debate. I digress and yield. I mean, I understand your points, and I understand a healthy intervention of government towards moving the planet towards self-sufficient and long-lasting. And then it's just a matter of the debate of how do we get there. But I'm definitely not in enough of a headspace right now to go in that direction. So I'm happy
no, I
to,
get that.
bow out and
Hey.
yield up to the next person that wants to talk.
You're not yielding. I mean, let's make one thing clear here. We're not yielding. We're just conversing, first of all. So
Just the conversation, just to be
yeah,
able to talk.
yeah, we're just talking. I mean, but otherwise, I mean, is there anything else? I mean, on this you want to talk about? I mean, you said you had something planned, so I mean, we can delve into it a little bit more. I mean, or we can shift something else. I mean,
Can we talk about something else?
I'd shift and just back down because I got to lay down or something. So I appreciate it, Incarnation, and I'll talk to you later, dude.
All right, man.
Yeah, he's RW's not feeling well. He's really and I get it because I've been sick the last couple weeks. So yeah, I'm willing to. I guess I'm willing to debate you guys on anything you want to.
Sure, man. Whatever you want.
What do you guys think about What do you guys think about DEI?
What's that?
I think we've had this. I don't know if it was with you, but I've had this conversation before.
It's not with me. I don't. Well, maybe it was. Have you been on my stream?
I don't know if I've been on your stream, but I remember one time I was in our W server and we or is it your server? I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways,
yeah, I think you agree with me. I think you agree with me on DEI.
In that it's I don't know. What was
do you support it?
I don't support the current implications of it, but I do understand where it comes from.
Well, okay. I mean, that when you say I understand where it comes from, that doesn't really validate it in any way.
Yeah, I'm saying there should be some incentive.
Because I mean, a Nazi sees where their motivations come from, right? Like when they think about like what they want to do, they see where the motivation come from, right? So like DEI is just straight up fucking racism. That's all it is. It's like literal in your face systemic racism. So if you think there's some like, oh, I see where someone's coming, that's bullshit. It's just wrong.
No, not really, because I can understand where the root of the talking points. Yeah, I can understand where the root of the talking points come from. If you're talking about them on a grand scale or a societal scale, yeah, I can understand where the talking points come from. It doesn't necessarily mean I agree with DEI as a whole.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but
so
for me,
it
it's
means
very easy.
I understand.
I'm against racial discrimination and systemic government racial discrimination. So I am against DEI. It's very simple.
Yeah, great. And I live in the country where there's actual segregation based off of what you could call DEI. So in Canada. But my point is.
Oh yeah, Canada. You guys are so fucked. You guys are basically an authoritarian state right now.
Not even close. But
anyway,
so
sure about that?
I understand.
You want to argue about that?
Sure.
You want to argue about that?
You can if you want to, but I don't think people want to talk about Canadian politics
let's do it
here. But all I wanted to say though is I understand as a white guy in China, right? This is me personally, right? I understand as a white guy in China that I'm a white guy in China. So with that,
you're a white guy in China.
Yeah, if I'm a white guy in China, I understand that I'm a white guy in China, even if I'm born there.
Okay.
So I understand that there are certain things or within the context of living in China that I will just simply not be privy to, given that I'm a fucking white guy, right, in a world of Chinese people. So I think, the problem, right, is this idea that, America is a land for everybody, yet the majority of the people are white, right? So yes, as an immigrant or a person of color, you're going to feel somewhat left out. I can understand that sentiment, right? Because I can understand where it comes from, right? I can understand how a minority in a predominantly white country would feel left out and come up with excuses and reasons why, the system is against them, is what I'm trying to say. It's like, I understand where their talking points come from.
I gotcha. No, you're right. And I also see that. I don't think it's necessarily true, and I think most of us strive for that not to be the case, because most of us, no matter we want people of whatever race or whatever to be able to like access the same things that we all do. I do. That's how I feel. But I think that a lot of people feel that way, and that unfortunately, there that a lot of minorities in America and around the world really are misled to believe that there is like this conspiracy against them. I think it's interesting. It's a lot of these conspiracies. They mirror the anti-Semitic trope conspiracies, but they're just like repurposed for white people.
Yeah, and I would say that in a place like the United States, I think that gets severely overblown. I do think if you're a black guy in Europe, you're going to get passed up by a worse white guy. Let's be honest here. Like Eastern Europe, especially.
Yeah, but
like, if you're black, you're a black
sure,
dude,
but
buddy. You're
like,
not. Yeah, like so you get less of that in the United States. But if you have like, and I would apply this to all cultures. Take race away from it. I would apply it to all culture. You have a culture of punk rockers, and some prep dude comes in, right? And you've got the choice between the prep dude who's highly qualified and two other punk rockers. Who like is it beyond is it beyond reasonable doubt to say that they would likely hire one of the two punk rock dudes instead of the preppy dude, even though the preppy dude was more qualified?
yeah, I mean, but if I don't know. I mean, like,
But
you're
you get what
talking
I
about
mean?
hiring practices.
Well, I'm just talking in general. Like, I'm just talking from a cultural standpoint. Typically, us as humans will like to stick around with people of similar culture. And if the choice in choosing between one culture or the other will typically side with the culture we're more familiar with.
Okay, for sure. I understand. I get that. But a lot of that might be based on just experience and understanding of cultures, and I think it is okay to rank cultures and like maybe think certain cultures are superior to other ones, right?
I don't have an issue with that. I'm not. I also believe in what's called culture shock, right? So I believe that if you bring in somebody of like if you bring in too many people of a different culture within, let's call it a corporate work setting, okay? And you have this particular corporate work culture, and they go on a hiring spree and they hire like 50 people, and the work culture completely changes, and that oftentimes will change the dynamic of a workplace. I don't think that sometimes can be good, but I think a lot of times that's bad. Right. And I think too much culture shock is a bad thing. So yeah, sure, it's okay to bring in, I'll call this. Let's say it's a bunch of white dudes and they want to bring in some Indian guy. Okay, you bring in some Indian guy, fine. But if you bring in 3 or 4 Indian guys out of 10 employees, you're gonna get a severe shift in culture.
No, right. I'm with you, and that's what I think. Like, I'm not against like the melting pot, right? I'm for that. I am for all these different cultures coming together and all of us working together. But like when you talk about like DEI and like Mark Cuban and his idea of what DEI is and all these kind of things, and it really comes down to being racial quotas. You're not necessarily like when you're like, let's say an airline, like your priorities are making money and safety. And when you start bringing like DEI into it, you are compromising those things, because then
I agree.
it's almost like you're ranking these other qualities that have nothing to do with anything into the equation. So like, that's what I think is a problem.
I totally
it's like,
agree.
that's what
I
feel like it's turning into like a mind virus.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I'll use I like to use Quebec as an example. Okay, Quebec has this obsession with the French language, right? And Boeing, was it Boeing or was it Bombardier? No, Bombardier. Okay, Bombardier, which is a Quebec company, headquartered in Montreal. They hired a new CEO. That CEO didn't speak a lick of fucking French. And this was like a fucking massive deal in the province of Quebec. Like, they hired a fucking English guy in the fucking Quebec. He's got to speak French and this and that. Bombardier finally had to come out and say, listen, we hired the right guy for the right fucking job. And speaking French on a multinational company is not as high of a requirement as being qualified to do the job. Please leave us the fuck alone. Like literally, the company had to come out and say a statement like that. Like just leave us the fuck alone.
Yeah. So it seems like we agree. Like, what do you think? Like in America, I think you're about to see a tidal wave of lawsuits washing over companies that are. I think DEI is about to die. I really do, and it should, because it's just it's so wrong. And I get where well-meaning people are coming from in it. I get it. Okay, I do get that. They want to help other groups kind of come up, and hey, I'm all for that. But you cannot do that. You can't do that by becoming like Ku Klux Klan racist against another group. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
I don't.
get it.
And what bothers me is that people.
Yeah.
What bothers me is that people don't seem to understand that. Like, why not? It's such a simple concept.
Well, I could agree with you that it seems, well, how this is being implemented and how some people are taking advantage of the loose and vague wording in the legislation. It does seem like in some cases it is an attack on white people, and I would agree that in some cases,
No, it is 100%. Like,
I would say that in
is.
certain cases, it definitely is an attack
and
on white people.
Again, I'm like an old school left winger, all right, and I'm against racism, and I even hated white people at one point when I was young. But that's part of like what made me realize like something's not right about this, right? So,
again, I don't have a problem though. I don't have a problem though with a private club that is blacks only. I don't have an issue with that. You want to be a member of a blacks only fucking member? I don't give a shit about that. But if you want to have public funding, you want this to be implemented through public funding and through any of that. Yeah, I have an issue with that.
Okay, so all right, we've been talking about that. We need to, if we're debating, you and me are debating. Is this are we it? Is there other debaters? What are we going to talk about? I want to debate something.
Well, okay, if you really want, what's up?
I was gonna say I just invited.
What are we going to? What do you all think about? How about this? What do you guys all think about right now? Biden and our media start trying to like pass blame off on the border onto Republicans. Like, do you guys agree with that? Who do you guys think is to blame for the border right now?
The government.
Both, yeah, the government and en masse. The
Yeah.
government, yeah, I agree with that.
What do you agree? Huh? What is the answer?
The government. It's a neither part. It's a both.
The government? I mean, no. Okay, well, how can you say that when there's such a disparity between Trump and Biden, and especially? There's a lot of other factors in this, but we'll start with this. The fact that there is just such a disparity in the catch and release of illegals into the country between Trump and Biden. Like, it's not, there's been 8 million into the country since Biden took over.
I mean,
That's insane.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, like on the topic strictly of immigration, if you're going to compare track records, yeah, of course, Trump had an exceptionally better track record.
Right,
but he's a blip, so to speak. Like he's
true, that's fine, right, and that's fine. But like they're trying to pass blame literally onto Trump. Joe Biden said Trump is to blame now for this.
Yeah, I mean,
Joe Biden said that 2 days ago.
Yeah, I know. I heard him say it. I mean, basically, he's just throwing out talking. I don't like to use the word talking points, but things that people can say. Because he knows that generally his entire base of followers are normie morons, right? So it's like...
Okay, well, and the media is also echoing this. Okay, well, we can't debate this. What can we debate? Are we all in agreement on everything here? Did we check beforehand if both servers here were in total agreement on everything?
Well,
I had actually...
No, so I mean, initially, initially we were having a debate.
Yeah, I had actually jumped up here because you guys started talking about the DEI stuff, and I was just going to come behind you, Dronetek, and be like, "Yeah,
okay,
I'm with you." Yeah, it's nonsense.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I'm all about a debate here. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like about a lot of different topics. I mean, throw them out. I'm for it.
So
I kind of want to touch on the elections. You know, the fact that we have, like the fact that Biden went unopposed this year entirely by the entire Democratic Party, which has never happened before, at least in my lifetime. You know, I'm only 27, and I've been through 3 elections already. So there were Sanders, there were Sanders, and then there was Sanders again, Andrew Yang, and everybody else, Marianne, and the only one who went against Biden was Marianne. And then Trump is like everybody. What Trump kind of is gonna win in a landslide. No, obviously, because he's just very well known. He was a former president anyway. But at least
I don't think he is. I don't think he has a chance of winning, to be honest.
At least we're talking about like the Republican primaries, at least. Like, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, the primary. That's already done. I mean, he is.
That's already won.
Nationally, I don't think he can win.
I'm talking about like let's say the primaries. Like, why didn't Biden have nobody opposing him this year? Which I found
right because the Democrat Party is essentially the uniparty now, and they are moving us towards a one-party state. 100%. They want to criminalize opposition to them. They want to say their opposition are terrorists and threats to democracy and all this shit. Guys, I'm like, my belief is that we are heading towards an authoritarian one-party state, and it is the Democrats that are driving us that way. And not just Democrats, but like uniparty Republicans or whatever, rhinos, whatever you want to call them.
That's the establishment.
There is this state apparatus that is trying to gain total control, and they're doing it. They're doing it.
That's true. I mean, but then again, I feel like I'm not gonna lie. I think I've always been somebody who didn't matter what side it was, so long as they're willing to make change instead of like an establishment sort of status quo sort of rhetoric. I was kind of for that. Doesn't really matter whether like the change is chaotic or not. At least it was changed nonetheless. You know, I think for me, I voted Sanders originally back in 2016, and then I voted Trump probably after that because I realized that
you voted Sanders
originally, yeah, and I was very much a left winger before. So for me,
I'm gonna do this thing called not voting ever.
If I can say,
why is that?
Because
Like,
the
what's the point?
uniparty, the uniparty parasite the termites have spread too far. You see, if you get let's say a handful of non-uniparty voices inside Congress,
Sure.
it's like they are again a blip. They have. You should. I'll give you a perfect example of this. The other day they had Zuckerberg at a hearing. Did anybody catch this?
No.
I watched a little bit of it.
Did you notice how both sides of the aisle were taking him to task for crimes he did not commit?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they had invited people to come and do the same from the public. They're both the same party. The only thing that separates them, it's the only thing. They share the basic same meta ethic. The difference is what they want to do with that meta ethic. They all want to remove your freedoms, limit your freedoms. That's what they want to do. Both sides of the party. But one group says, well, we want to do it for this, and the other one says, well, we want to do it for that. There's no difference between the two.
So, I just want to say the main reason why.
I'm pretty sure you followed this, Norlis. But like, what would the solution be towards something like this when we're probably we're not only losing our freedoms, we've seen it before in the Patriot Act, we've seen it before, and
you're not gonna like what I have to say.
Well, of course, I don't mind. I like, but at least it's truthful. At least
I'm gonna say this as a bleeding heart.
Don't say anything like war because, to be honest, like that's a whole other topic, and don't say that.
So the trajectories of states and the trajectories of societies can almost always be kind of projected in the sense, or anticipated in some manner, in the sense that we are growing more and more unethical as a society. And the only inevitable end game to that is downfall, is collapse. Whether it be economically, whether it be war. We've already been at war before. It's happened. We've been at war for 30 years consistently with other nations. Like, this is a big time evil business. We're either killing people, stealing their shit, removing their freedoms. The more and more we expand that Leviathan, the more and more the water's going to shrink up for it to swim in.
You know what's happening is you have a political situation in the country where I think it's the Democrats that end up lowering the standards over and over, and then Republicans join them afterwards. It seems to be, I might be biased, but I think I can prove it. But I think that's basically the way it's going. And we're just getting into lower and lower and lower forms of discourse, and both sides are justifying and rationalizing doing more and more corrupt things in order to one up each other, and it's just getting worse and worse. So I agree with you totally.
Well, it's because they don't exist otherwise. You have to understand that the state cannot exist otherwise. It can only exist through force, right? So if it spends all of its time developing new laws and new regulations, and yet it really offers nothing to the public except telling the public, well, if you don't abide by it, we're going to hurt you. Well, okay, the more that they develop, the more they're going to have to tell us this. And the more that they tell us this, the more evil the state becomes. It's dragon sickness, you see? Tolkien wrote about this.
Can I also point out kind of an interesting parallel to this, and I think is probably just another symptom of the way our society is kind of decaying here, is I don't know how many of you guys watch like First Amendment audit videos, those kind of videos where people just like film in public and just see if they can bait police into like trying to like violating their rights and stuff. Like it's insane. To me, I started watching those videos. I am a while ago now, but I am constantly amazed by how willing these police are to just completely violate people's rights with no thought of it whatsoever, even though they take an oath to the Constitution. And I feel like that is a symptom, more local symptom of the greater problem that we're seeing. And that we're seeing the exact same thing happen on a more grand scale across our country. And I think people need to watch those videos. I talk about them here and there, but you need to check them out for sure.
Yeah.
So
I think.
Okay.
Go ahead. All right. Basically, it's kind of it reminds me of kind of like the Stanford prisoner experiment or the Milgram.
That too.
Yeah, that.
Yep.
When you
100%
put somebody in a situation that kind of violates or kind of like puts them in a position of power that they can willingly abuse or whatever or point in time, there are many people who
becomes us versus them.
Yeah, it becomes a tribal mentality at the end of the day, and then after that, you kind of you make a caricature of like the people inside the prison instead of like trying to realize that both of you guys are the human beings at the end of the day. And it's it's I think what the original term for it is called the Lucifer effect. Where somebody, if you put somebody in the right set of circumstances, they can become much more evil, more brutal, and they tend to go out their way to, like have a like an abuse of power, or they. I think Viktor Frankl puts it best is when there's an abnormal situation, there's a abnormal reaction to the abnormal situation, a normal reaction. Because of how many people, people can go out their way, lose their minds, and everything else, both on the oppression side and both on the on the on the oppressed side. And I feel like a lot of people are stressed out and not really taking a step back to realize that we're all getting fucked at the end of the day.
I totally agree with you, man. I think the police, it's almost like they can't help but turn into this situation where literally like they see everybody as the enemy. The public is like, I worked retail for a long time and I started hating the public, right? So I can't even imagine like what a police officer, like what they deal with. But that's not an excuse because they are public servants and they just can't act that way. They have to be professional. And I think you're right. I think it's almost like it's unavoidable. Like we had to figure out some other way to do this because in the current situation, the police just end up treating everybody in the public as if they are prisoners almost, and they're prison guards.
So the whole thing about the police and their toxicity is it's so funny to hear, normal folk who, perhaps maybe haven't gotten into my line of research and stuff, talk about how this stuff surprises them. I would have you guys know that there is an entire literature, an entire multi-decade literature on the toxicity of law enforcement. It's a thing. It's been a documented thing.
It's a problem, no doubt about it. I'm a convert. I'm on the right. And I used to be back to blue, but now I realize back to blue until it happens to you. There's a lot of problems with the police out there, no doubt about it. Like they're not trained correctly. They know nothing about they think that they take an oath to the Constitution, but they think it's like a big joke. Like if you try to stand up for your rights, they think it's like you're a sovereign citizen or something. And it's like who trained you? They know nothing about the First Amendment. They know nothing about the distinction between public and private property. Like they don't know the laws.
It's worse than that, dude. So there's points at which you can defend them, and then there's points at which you can't. And some of the points at which you can't, like how they actually operate. Like, take it from me, right? So I joined the Marine Corps not too long ago, a couple years back, right? I ended up not going through the entirety of training because I kind of saw, me being the astute man I am, sort of things that were intrinsic to this line of work. And so one of the things that they teach you while you're at boot camp is citizens are the worst kind of scum. This is the kind of things that they say to you verbatim. Citizens are the worst kind of scum. They're people without any dignity, without any honor, without any discipline. And yet here you are being trained to protect them. And I don't know about you. Whenever you're trained to protect something that you hate, it's not really something you feel like doing. That's just one example of how toxic some of this shit is. Right? Now, don't get me wrong.
And these people have egos that are off the charts.
Well, they have egos that are totally underdeveloped.
And the ego takes over.
Yeah, they have egos that are totally underdeveloped in a sort of Ericksonian kind of sense. Right? Like, so you have these sort of developmental stages in life. One of the big ones is the identity versus confusion. Right? And if you can't actually properly formulate your identity, and this actually ties back into the DEI stuff, if you can't properly formulate your identity, well, by the time you reach adolescence, post-adolescence, it's like, dude, there's a whole big chunk of you that hasn't been refined, man. And so a huge portion of what you find yourself inclined to do is going to be like kind of just stupid shit. Like, for example, in the case of police officers, like their whole model is this weird deontic model of, you know, I'm just following orders. They don't know why they're following orders. They just know them's the
Here's
rule.
the deal.
Yeah. And
Here's
the deal. They all say that. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're like, here's the deal.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But see, the thing about it, they're coming from it from well, this came from on high, and that's the way it goes. And that's how they're going to treat you. You stop where you are, because I say
exactly.
Stop where you are. That's that. I don't
care.
They think it's in the law.
Right. They think they have this authority over people. That's why I love the auditors, because they're opening people's eyes to these rights they forgot about, and that the powers that be have been taking advantage of. Precisely. Right, over a long period of time.
Precisely. And again, I encourage everybody here to go check out the literature on the toxic. I mean, like even people that had been working in the FBI for 20 years have written on this stuff, like just like broad, absolutely unacceptable toxic. There's huge programs, like neighborhood, what do they call it? Community policing programs that are trying to implement globally to get the police force less toxic. It's like that. Like they have implemented plans. Again, there's a whole literature on it. Go check it out, man. But again, at the same time, there's points at which you can defend these people, right? So, for example, it's like they do see crazy shit. They see horrifying stuff, man.
Yeah.
Stuff that most normal people wouldn't want to see. And if they did see, they might be a little scarred, and they got to see it quite frequently. And no, it's not encapsulated in their training. There's no training that can prepare you for the kind of stuff that they see. Bodies, kids, mutilated, that kind of shit. Raped women. Horrifying stuff.
That's true. Right? Honestly, I think that when you look at history, for instance, what happened with the Hutsus and Tutsis, you know, like what I forget which tribe exactly it was, but the other tribe said that the minor tribe was a bunch of cockroaches and that you needed to get stepped on. And the part of the brain that kind of lights up is the same part of the fight or flight system, but also the part where you find something disgusting. So when you find something morally disgusting or morally, you know, apparent, you know, that same part, the animalistic part of the brain, lights up to try to make the caricature of that essentially dehumanizes, but also makes you want to eliminate a threat. You know, you stop caring for the other human being. But then again, I think that in and of itself is also a human characteristic, because most of us don't go out of the way to care for people that we're not closely related to, or essentially our tribe of people. So, like most people, if you were to look at Dunbar's number, we can only have 150 close interactions at a time. And the reason why we have bigger interactions now as people, and why we have morality and everything else, is because we have common stories we tell each other, like religion or capitalism or whatsoever you. And you know, we know the right and wrong most of the time, or you know, we question, or we more likely to not question what's right or wrong. But overall, the idea of just I guess I'm just gonna tie this back around. The idea of having something that impacts that same part of the brain that makes you disgusted, makes you hateful, makes you it makes you want to fight or flight. After a certain period of time, like causes things like tumors, causes things like your amygdala being flared up, and this is what happened with the white church shooter back in the 1960s, where he had essentially was raised as a Marine, had a great life and everything else, but unfortunately, he had so much PTSD from it that he essentially developed a tumor and essentially shot up his entire crowds of people. Like 17 people died off of his campus tower. So I think overall, if you're exposed to environments long enough, your brain chemistry, who you are essentially as a person, changes overall. So I guess that's my piece. Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, I don't know. I don't know what all we have to argue about, but we might as well just wrap this up because I feel like we all agree about everything.
Basically.
Yeah, but sometimes that's half the fun, man. Like, fuck, dude. I wish more people agreed with me about a lot of things because I just feel like they'd be happier or something. But
yeah, I know that's cool. But hey, you guys are all cool. I really like you all. You're a cool group of guys, and I'm definitely gonna recommend everybody come and check out your Discord.
Yeah,
shit gets crazy in here.
Yeah,
true. I mean, unless somebody else
guys, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube as well. We're trying to grow it as well. So hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dronetek, for self-promoting right now. I'm just trying.
Oh no, you're good.
Put
you're
that
good.
plug in,
you
bro. What are you talking about? Plug that shit.
Yeah.
So
y'all plug whatever you want.
If somebody wants to come up,
hey, I'm gonna put it in the channel description towards the comments, and I'm good. And I guess we're just gonna peace out from there. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna go because I'm old and I'm tired. So, do you guys play any video games?
Yeah, we do. 2 years straight.
Hey,
all right,
Habibi,
man.
Well, I'm gonna. Do you guys play Fortnite?
Yeah. Do you play Apex?
Okay, wait.
Play what?
Sec, guys.
Do you play Apex?
Guys, just 1 sec before the too much video game talk. Habibi, do you want to keep the stream going?
Hello.
Apex.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if somebody else wants to come up, if somebody else wants to come up, we can keep going.
No, bro, that's for fucking teeny boppers.
I guess nobody can hear me.
All right. Well, I'll come join you guys here.
All right. Peace. Let's go.
Can nobody hear me? I guess they can't hear me. I was going to say if somebody else wants to come up.
Have fun.